I never thought I'd be the kind of person to kick my own parents out of their home. But then again, I never thought they'd be the kind of people to turn away their 10-year-old granddaughter on Christmas Eve either. My name is Emily Vance, and I'm an emergency room nurse. I've spent the last 15 years of my life saving people stitching up wounds, holding hands during final moments, and running on 3 hours of sleep and cold coffee. It's exhausting work, but it's honest work. It's the kind of work that makes you feel like you matter, like you're making a difference in the world. That feeling was something I'd been chasing my whole life, especially since I never got it from my own family. Growing up, I was always the odd one out. My older sister Sarah was the golden child, beautiful and charming, the kind of daughter my parents could show off at church gatherings and family reunions. I was the quiet one, the bookish one, the one who got straight A's, but somehow never earned the same pride in my father's eyes. I remember being 7 years old, showing my mother a perfect score on my math test and watching her barely glance at it before turning back to admire Sarah's mediocre art project that she'd clearly rushed through the night before. The pattern continued throughout my childhood. When Sarah pushed me down the stairs when I was 9, giving me a sprained ankle that made me miss my school's science fair, my parents just laughed it off. "She's just playing Emily. Don't be so sensitive." When I got accepted to nursing school with a partial scholarship, my father asked why I couldn't have gotten a full ride like I was supposed to. When Sarah dropped out of college after 1 semester, they told her she was too creative for traditional education and bought her a car to find herself. I learned early on that love in my family was conditional, and the conditions were impossible for me to meet. So I did what any desperate child does. I tried harder. I worked harder. I gave more. Maybe if I could just prove my worth, maybe if I could just show them how much I cared, they'd finally see me as someone valuable. That desperation followed me into adulthood. When my parents started having financial troubles 12 years ago, I was the one who stepped up. Sarah was too busy with her latest failed business venture, too busy being a single mother to her daughter Chloe after her 3rd divorce. So I bought them a house. Not just any house, but a beautiful 3-bedroom colonial in a good neighborhood, the kind of place my mother had always dreamed about. I put it in my name because their credit was shot, but I told them it was theirs. Home sweet home. The mortgage payments came out of my account every month, $1,500 like clockwork for over a decade. Then there were the utility bills, the internet, the property taxes, the home insurance. When my father needed heart surgery, I made sure they had the best health insurance plan my money could buy. When the roof needed replacing, I paid for it. When my mother wanted to remodel the kitchen, I paid for that too, even though it meant putting off my own dream of taking Lily to Disneyland. Lily, my daughter, my whole world. She came into my life 10 years ago, this tiny, perfect little human that my husband David and I created together. From the moment I held her, I knew I would do anything to protect her, to give her the childhood I never had, to make sure she always felt loved and valued and seen. I thought my parents would love her too. I thought maybe a grandchild would soften them, would give me a chance to finally be part of the family in a real way. And for a while, it seemed like it might work. They cooed over her baby photos. They came to her first birthday party. But as she got older, as Sarah's daughter Chloe became the obvious favorite, I started to see the same old patterns emerging. Chloe got the expensive birthday presents. Lily got a card with $20 in it. Chloe got invited to special grandparent-grandchild outings. Lily was told they were too busy. When both girls had dance recitals on the same night, my parents went to Chloe's without even telling us they wouldn't be at Lily's. I found out when Lily came off stage searching the audience for them with those hopeful eyes, and I had to tell her that Grandma and Grandpa couldn't make it. But I told myself it was fine. I told myself that at least Lily had me and David, that we were enough, that she didn't need grandparents who couldn't see how special she was. I kept writing the checks. I kept showing up to family dinners. I kept trying to earn a place at a table that never really had a seat for me. The signs were all there. I just didn't want to see them. Or maybe I couldn't afford to see them because seeing them would mean admitting that I'd wasted 15 years and thousands of dollars trying to buy love from people who were never going to give it to me. Everything changed on Christmas Eve 2 months ago. I'd been working a brutal double shift at the hospital. December in the ER is absolute chaos. Heart attacks from stress and rich food. Car accidents from drunk drivers and icy roads. People who've put off medical care all year suddenly realizing they need to use their insurance before it resets. I'd been on my feet for 16 hours straight, had held pressure on a stab wound while we waited for the surgeon had pronounced an elderly man dead from a massive stroke, while his wife sobbed in my arms. I came home at nearly midnight so tired I could barely see straight. David was already asleep. I expected the house to be quiet and dark, expected to collapse into bed and sleep for 10 hours before the chaos of Christmas morning with Lily. Instead, I found my daughter curled up on our living room couch, still in her nice Christmas dress, her little body shaking with silent sobs. My exhaustion vanished in an instant. I dropped my bag and rushed to her, gathering her into my arms. "Lily, baby, what's wrong? What are you doing down here?" She looked up at me with red, swollen eyes, and my heart shattered. "They wouldn't let me in, Mommy." "What, who wouldn't let you in?" "Grandma and Grandpa. I went to their Christmas party like you said, and they wouldn't let me come inside." I felt something cold and sharp settle in my chest. "What do you mean they wouldn't let you inside? You were on the list." I confirmed with Mom 3 times. Lily's voice was so small, so broken. "Grandma Carol opened the door and she looked at me like she didn't even know who I was. She said there were already 28 people there and they didn't have room for one more. She said I should have called first." "Called first? You're 10 years old, baby, and we talked about this. We confirmed." "I know, Mommy. I told her that, but she just kept saying there was no room and then she closed the door. Chloe was right there, Mommy. She was sitting in the living room eating cookies and she just laughed. Grandma Carol saw her laugh and she didn't say anything." I looked around and noticed Lily's little overnight bag by the door untouched. On the coffee table was a plastic container, and inside I could see a demolished pile of homemade sandwiches and fruit salad that she'd spent all afternoon preparing. She'd been so excited about bringing something to contribute to the party, about being a big girl helper, like Grandma Carol always said Chloe was. "Honey, where was Daddy when this happened?" "He was at the hospital with you. You said I was old enough to walk to Grandma's house by myself since it's only 2 blocks. Remember, you said the party started at 6 and you'd meet me there after your shift." I did remember. I'd thought it would be fine. After all, it was my parents' house, my daughter's grandparents. What could possibly go wrong? "I waited on the porch for a while," Lily continued, her voice barely a whisper. "I thought maybe Grandma would change her mind, but she never came back. I could hear everyone laughing inside. I could hear Chloe talking really loud about all her Christmas presents. And nobody came to get me." "So you walked home by yourself in the dark?" She nodded. "It's only 2 blocks, Mommy. I know the way." I held her tighter, feeling rage building in my chest like nothing I'd ever experienced. This wasn't about hurt feelings anymore. This wasn't about old patterns or favoritism. This was about my child being rejected and humiliated and left out in the cold on Christmas Eve, while 28 other people celebrated inside a house that I paid for. I heard footsteps on the stairs. David appeared, his hair messy from sleep concern, written all over his face. "I heard voices. Is everything okay?" "No," I said, and my voice sounded strange even to my own ears. Flat, cold, decided. "Everything is not okay." I told him what happened. I watched his face go through the same journey mine had, from confusion to disbelief to anger so deep it made his hands shake. He knelt down next to the couch and pulled Lily into a hug. "I'm so sorry, sweetheart. That should never have happened to you." "It's okay, Daddy," Lily said, but it wasn't okay. Nothing about this was okay. David looked at me over Lily's head. His eyes were asking a question. "What are you going to do?" I knew exactly what I was going to do. For the first time in my life, I was going to stop trying to earn love from people who didn't have any to give. I was going to stop sacrificing my family's well-being for people who saw us as nothing more than an ATM with occasional inconvenient emotions attached. I was going to burn it all down. After we got Lily settled in bed, I stayed up all night. David sat with me at the kitchen table watching as I pulled out file after file of records. Mortgage payments, utility bills, insurance premiums, home repair receipts. I'd kept everything not out of any foresight, but simply because I was meticulous about records. It's the nurse in me. Document everything. The numbers were staggering. Over the course of 12 years, I had paid over $300,000 for their comfort and care. $300,000 that could have gone to Lily's college fund, to vacations, to our own home renovations, to retirement savings. $300,000, and they couldn't even let my daughter into a Christmas party. "I'm done," I said to David as the sun started to rise on Christmas morning. "I'm completely done." "What do you want to do?" he asked, and there was no judgment in his voice, only support. "I want them out. I want them out of that house. I want every bill, every payment, every single string that ties me to them cut. I don't want to give them another cent, another second of my time, another moment of our lives." "Are you sure this is a big step, Em?" I thought about Lily's face. I thought about all the years of being invisible, of being the family's personal bank account, of hoping that this time, maybe this time, they'd see my worth. "I've never been more sure of anything in my life." David nodded. "Then I'm with you. Whatever you need, however I can help. We protect our daughter. That's the priority." We spent Christmas morning with Lily, making it as normal and happy as we could. We opened presents, made pancakes, watched Christmas movies. I didn't tell her what I was planning. She was 10 years old. She didn't need to carry the weight of adult decisions. But after she went to bed that night full of candy canes and hot chocolate and renewed happiness, I made a call to my lawyer. The day after Christmas, I drove to my parents' house with David beside me. I had a letter in my hand, printed on legal letterhead, official and final. My hands weren't shaking. My heart was steady. I felt calmer than I had in years. I didn't knock on this door. I didn't announce myself. I simply slid the letter into the mail slot and walked back to the car. The letter was straightforward and clear. Notice of repossession of property. Termination of all financial support. They had 30 days to vacate the premises. The document included an itemized list of every payment I'd made over 12 years, notarized and witnessed. This wasn't a threat. This wasn't a negotiation. This was a done deal. We'd barely made it to the end of the driveway when I heard the door open behind us. I didn't turn around. I didn't need to see my mother's face to know what expression she'd be wearing. "Emily!" My mother's voice cut through the cold morning air. "Emily, get back here right now!" David glanced at me, asking a silent question. I shook my head. We kept driving. My phone started ringing before we even made it home. I turned it off. It rang again. And again. And again. 17 calls in 30 minutes. I didn't answer a single one. The next morning, my mother showed up at my door. She was still in her bathrobe, her hair unbrushed, her face red with rage. She was waving the shredded remains of the legal letter in her hand like a weapon. I opened the door but didn't invite her in. I stood in the doorway, a physical barrier between her and my home, my family, my peace. "What the hell do you think you're doing, Emily?" She spat, her voice shrill enough to make the neighbor's dog start barking. She was still in her bathrobe, the old pink one with the coffee stain on the collar that I'd offered to replace 3 times. Her hair was unbrushed, sticking up at odd angles, and her face was already red with rage. "After everything we've done for you, everything we've sacrificed, you're going to throw us out on the street like garbage." I looked at her standing on my doorstep, this woman who'd given birth to me but never really mothered me, and I felt nothing. No guilt, no sadness, no fear. Just a cold, calm clarity. "Everything you've done for me," I repeated, my voice eerily calm. The contrast between her hysteria and my composure seemed to enrage her further. "Name one thing, Mom, one single thing you've done for me in the last 35 years that didn't benefit you more." She stepped forward, trying to push her way into my house. I held my ground, blocking the doorway with my body. She wasn't coming in. Not this time. Not ever again. "We raised you!" She shrieked, spittle flying from her mouth. "We clothed you, fed you, put a roof over your head. We paid for your education. We gave you a family, a home, everything a child could want. That's called the legal minimum requirement of parenthood." I said, my voice still calm, still steady. "That's not special treatment. That's basic obligation. And you didn't pay for my education. I had scholarships and student loans that I'm still paying off. You and Dad didn't contribute a single dollar to my college tuition. We couldn't afford it. We had 2 children to raise. But you could afford to buy Sarah a new car when she dropped out after 1 semester. You could afford to pay for her apartment for 2 years while she found herself. You could afford 3 vacations to Florida without ever inviting me once." Her face was turning purple now, a vein pulsing visibly in her forehead. "Don't you dare speak to me that way. I'm your mother. You owe me respect. Respect. I laughed, but there was no humor in it. You want to talk about respect? Let's talk about respect, Mom. Let's talk about how you told everyone at my high school graduation party that you were surprised I graduated at all since I was always so socially awkward. Let's talk about how you asked me if I was sure nursing was the right career for someone not naturally nurturing like me. Let's talk about how you introduced me to your friends as our other daughter, while Sarah got to be our Sarah. I never said that, but her eyes shifted away from mine and we both knew she was lying. You did, Mom. You said it at Aunt Betty's 60th birthday party. You said it at church. You've said it dozens of times, and every single time it felt like a knife in my chest. You're being overly sensitive. You always were too sensitive. And there it is, I said softly. The classic deflection. I'm not allowed to have feelings about how you treat me because I'm too sensitive. Well, guess what, Mom? Sensitive or not, I'm done. Done. She barked out a harsh laugh. You can't be done. We're family. You don't get to just walk away from family. Are you my family? I leaned against the doorframe, crossing my arms. My hands were shaking, but I kept them hidden. I wouldn't let her see any weakness. Because mothers don't turn away their grandchildren on Christmas Eve. Mothers don't show blatant favoritism between their children. Mothers don't treat their daughters like ATMs while giving them nothing but criticism and cold shoulders in return. Oh, here we go. She threw her hands up dramatically. The Christmas thing again. It was a misunderstanding, Emily. There were too many people, we didn't have enough room. Why can't you just let it go? Let it go. My voice rose for the first time and I saw her flinch. Good. Let her be uncomfortable for once. You want me to let it go? My 10-year-old daughter walked home alone in the dark on Christmas Eve because you told her there was no room for her. She stood on your porch, Mom. Your porch. The porch of a house that I bought, and you shut the door in her face. I didn't shut the door in her face. I explained that we had a full house. Stop! I interrupted, my hand slicing through the air. Just stop. You had room for 28 people. 28! I know because you posted about it on Facebook. So blessed to have our home filled with 28 wonderful people this Christmas. That's what you wrote. 28 people, but not one more spot for your granddaughter. The house was full. What was I supposed to do, make someone leave? Yes, I shouted. Yes, Mom. That's exactly what you were supposed to do. You were supposed to say, I'm sorry, but family comes first. We'll make room. You were supposed to pull up an extra chair, squeeze people together, do whatever it took to make space for a child who walked 2 blocks in the cold to be with her family on Christmas. She should have called first, my mother muttered, but her voice was weaker now. She's 10 years old, and we did call. I confirmed with you 3 times that week that Lily was coming. You said, and I quote, of course she's coming. She's family. Remember that conversation, Mom? Or are you going to tell me I'm misremembering that too? For the first time since she'd arrived, my mother was silent. She looked down at the shredded letter in her hands, picking at the pieces. Meanwhile, I continued, my voice dropping back to that eerie calm, Chloe was inside. Not just inside, but sitting in the seat that should have been Lily's, eating cookies that Lily had been looking forward to making with you. And when Lily knocked on the door when she tried one more time to be let in, Chloe laughed. She laughed, Mom, and you saw it. You heard it, and you did nothing. Chloe is just a child. Children laugh at inappropriate times. Chloe is 13, old enough to know better, old enough to understand cruelty, and you let it happen. You endorsed it by your silence. I didn't endorse anything. Her voice was rising again, defensive. You're twisting everything. You're making it sound worse than it was. Am I? I pushed off the doorframe, standing up straighter. Let me tell you what happened from Lily's perspective, Mom. She spent all afternoon making sandwiches and fruit salad. She wrapped a present for you and Dad with her own money. She put on her nicest dress, the red velvet one that makes her feel special. She walked to your house with a smile on her face, excited to be part of the family Christmas party. I watched my mother's face, saw the flicker of something that might have been shame. And then she knocked on the door, I continued. And her grandmother opened it and looked at her like she was a door-to-door salesperson, an inconvenience, an unexpected intrusion, and told her there was no room in a house with 28 people, no room for her. It wasn't like that, my mother whispered, but there was no conviction in her voice. It was exactly like that. Lily told me everything. She told me how she could hear people laughing inside, How she could see Chloe through the window, eating cookies and opening presents. How she waited on the porch for 15 minutes thinking maybe you'd change your mind. Maybe you'd realize you'd made a mistake. But you never came back out. You never checked on her. You never wondered if she made it home safely. I thought she went home. What was I supposed to do? Call me. I nearly screamed. You were supposed to call me. You were supposed to say, Emily, there's been a misunderstanding. Can you come get Lily? You were supposed to act like you gave a damn about your granddaughter's well-being, but you didn't. Because in your mind, it was easier to let her walk home alone in the dark than to inconvenience yourself or your precious party guests. You're being dramatic. Am I? Let me ask you something, Mom. If it had been Chloe standing on that porch, would you have sent her away? Silence. Damning absolute silence. Answer me, I demanded. If it had been Sarah's daughter, your favorite grandchild, would you have told her there was no room? That's different, she finally said. Chloe lives with Sarah. She doesn't have as stable a home life. She needs more attention. There it is, I said softly. The truth. It's always been different for Sarah, different for Chloe. They get consideration exceptions grace, and I get the bare minimum if I'm lucky. That's not true, but her protest was weak automatic. It's always been true, Mom. When Sarah failed out of college, you said she was too creative for traditional education and bought her a car. When I got accepted to nursing school with a partial scholarship, you asked why it wasn't a full ride. When Sarah got divorced, the first time you let her move back home, rent-free for 2 years. When I asked if David and I could stay with you for 1 month while our apartment was being fumigated, you said you didn't have room. We didn't have room then. You had a 3-bedroom house and Dad's office in the basement. But you didn't have room for me. You've never had room for me, Mom. Not physically, not emotionally, not in any way that matters. She shook her head stubbornly. You're rewriting history. You're making us out to be monsters when all we ever did was love you. Love me? I laughed bitterly. Is that what you call it? Let me tell you what love looked like in our house, Mom. Love was telling 9-year-old me that I looked chunky in my dance recital costume, while telling Sarah she looked beautiful. Love was missing every single one of my school plays because you were too tired, but never missing Sarah's soccer games, even though she sat on the bench the whole time. Love was telling me I was being selfish for wanting to go to college out of state, that I should stay close to help with family obligations, while you encouraged Sarah to spread her wings and explore. We needed you close. Your father wasn't well. Dad's been not well for 30 years, but he's somehow well enough to go fishing every weekend and play golf twice a week. You didn't need me close because Dad was sick. You needed me close because you needed someone to use. For the first time, something flickered in my mother's eyes. Not quite guilt, but maybe a hint of awareness. A tiny crack in the armor of denial she'd built around herself. It wasn't like that, she said, but her voice had lost some of its strength. She sounded almost uncertain now. Yes, it was, I said quietly. It's always been like that, and you know it. Deep down in whatever part of you is capable of honest self-reflection, you know exactly what you've done to me. The question is whether you're capable of admitting it. She stood there, the shredded letter falling from her hands in little pieces scattered across my doorstep like snow. For a moment, just a moment, I thought she might actually acknowledge it, might actually say the words I'd been waiting my whole life to hear. Instead, she said it wasn't personal. Something inside me broke. Not with pain, but with finality. The last tiny thread of hope that I'd been holding on to so thin I hadn't even realized it was there, snapped. Yes, it was, I said, and my voice was steady again. It's always been personal. It's been personal my entire life. When you forgot my 16th birthday but threw Sarah an elaborate sweet 16 party that was personal. When you told your friends I was the smart one in a tone that made it sound like a character flaw while Sarah was the beautiful one. That was personal. When you asked me to skip my own college graduation to help Sarah move into her new apartment, that was personal. Sarah is the favorite. Chloe is the favorite grandchild. I'm just the one who pays the bills. That's not fair, she said, but she couldn't meet my eyes. You're right, I agreed. It's not fair. It hasn't been fair for a very long time. It wasn't fair when I spent my teenage years babysitting Sarah's tantrums while you rewarded her with shopping trips. It wasn't fair when I took out student loans to pay for college while you bought Sarah a car. It wasn't fair when I worked double shifts to help support you while you complained that I didn't visit enough. And it sure as hell wasn't fair when you turned my daughter away on Christmas Eve." "But we're family," she cried, and now there were tears in her eyes. But they weren't tears of remorse. They were tears of frustration, of anger that I wasn't behaving the way she expected. Family forgives, family doesn't abandon each other. "You're right," I said softly. "Family doesn't abandon each other, so why have you been abandoning me my entire life?" "We never abandoned you." "You've been emotionally absent since I was a child, Mom. Physically present, but emotionally unavailable. And when I started paying your bills, I became useful. Not loved. Useful. There's a difference." My mother's face hardened again, the brief vulnerability vanishing like it had never existed. This was the mother I knew, the one who could never accept responsibility, never admit fault. She grabbed the letter from where pieces of it still clung to her bathrobe and tore it into even smaller pieces, throwing them in my face like confetti. "There!" she shouted triumphantly. "It's gone. You can't evict us because I destroyed the letter. It doesn't count." I almost laughed. Did she really think that's how legal documents worked? "Mom, that was a copy. My lawyer has the original. The county has a registered copy. Tearing up paper doesn't make reality disappear." "You can't do this. We're your parents." "You're right. I can't do this," I said, and I saw hope flash across her face for just a moment. Then I continued. "I already did it. The process started the moment you received that letter. You have 30 days. I suggest you start packing." "Fine!" she shrieked, her composure completely gone now. "Fine! If you want to be a heartless, ungrateful brat, then you can at least pay for Chloe's science camp this summer. It's $5,000 and Sarah can't afford it. If you're going to destroy your family, the least you can do is help your niece." The audacity was almost impressive. I was kicking them out of a house I'd bought, cutting off hundreds of dollars in monthly bills I'd paid, and her response was to ask for $5,000 more for a grandchild who'd sat laughing while mine stood outside in the cold. "No," I said simply. "What?" "No, I'm not paying for Chloe's camp. I'm not paying for anything ever again. Every payment stops today. The electricity, the water, the internet, the insurance, all of it. I've already called the companies. It's done." "You're insane! You've lost your mind!" "Maybe," I agreed. "Or maybe I've finally found it." I closed the door in her face. I heard her screaming on the other side, pounding on the wood, but I walked away. David was standing in the hallway with Lily, who'd come downstairs to see what the noise was about. "Was that Grandma?" Lily asked. "Yes, sweetheart." "Is she mad at us?" I knelt down to Lily's level and took her hands in mine. "Grandma is upset because some things are changing, but those changes are good for us. You don't need to worry about it, okay? You just need to know that Daddy and I love you more than anything in the world, and we're always going to protect you." Lily nodded, but I could see the wheels turning in her young mind. She was smart like I'd been at her age. She was putting pieces together. The next 3 days were a blur of phone calls I didn't answer and text messages I didn't read. My voicemail box filled up. I deleted it without listening. Sarah started leaving messages on David's phone when I blocked her number. He deleted those too. On the 4th day, something unexpected happened. My Aunt Betty called. Unlike the rest of my family, she left a calm, measured message asking if we could talk. Just talk. No accusations, no demands. I was surprised enough that I called her back. "Emily, honey," she said when she answered. "Thank you for calling me back. I just wanted to check on you. Your mother has been calling everyone in the family, telling them what's happening." "I'm sure she has, I said carefully. "And what exactly is she saying?" "That you've gone crazy, that you're evicting them over a tiny misunderstanding, that you're refusing to help them in their old age after everything they've done for you." There was a pause. "But Emily, I've known you since you were born. You're not a crazy person. You're not cruel. So I'm asking you what really happened." And just like that, I broke. Not crying, not falling apart, but the dam of silence cracked and everything poured out. I told her about the 12 years of payments. I told her about the favoritism, the way Sarah was always the golden child and I was always the disappointment. I told her about Lily being turned away on Christmas Eve, about my 10-year-old daughter walking home alone in the dark because her own grandparents couldn't make room for her at a party I was funding. The silence on the other end of the line was deafening. "My God," Aunt Betty finally said. "Emily, I had no idea. Nobody told me about Lily. Your mother made it sound like you just snapped one day for no reason. That's her specialty, I replied, making me look unstable so no one questions why she treats me the way she does. I'm so sorry. I should have seen it. We all should have seen it. It's not your fault. They're good at hiding it. No, Aunt Betty said firmly. We just didn't want to see it. It's easier to believe the victim is overreacting than to accept that people we love are capable of such cruelty. But Emily, that doesn't make it right. You're doing the right thing. I just called to tell you that. Whatever you need, I'm here. That conversation gave me strength for what came next, because the next day my father showed up at my workplace. I was in the middle of my shift treating a teenager with a broken arm when one of the front desk staff came to find me. Emily, there's a man here asking for you. Says he's your father. He seems upset. My heart sank. I finished wrapping the teenager's arm, gave instructions to the attending physician, and went out to the waiting room. My father was sitting in one of the plastic chairs looking older than I'd ever seen him. His shoulders were slumped. His hands were shaking. For a moment, I almost felt sorry for him. Almost. Dad, I said, you can't be here. I'm at work. He stood up and I saw tears in his eyes. My father never cried. In 35 years, I'd never seen him cry. Emily, please, he said, and his voice cracked. Please, can we just talk, just for a few minutes? Against my better judgment, I led him to a small conference room we used for family meetings. I closed the door but didn't sit down. I needed to be able to leave quickly if this went south. You have 5 minutes, I said. He sat down heavily like his legs wouldn't hold him anymore. Your mother is beside herself. She's not eating, not sleeping. This is killing her, Emily. And what about what is killing me, Dad? What about the 12 years I spent supporting you? What about Lily being turned away on Christmas Eve? Does any of that matter to you? It was a mistake, a terrible mistake. Your mother, she gets overwhelmed at parties. There were so many people. She panicked. She panicked. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. She had room for 28 strangers, but she panicked when her own granddaughter showed up. They weren't strangers. They were church friends' neighbors. And Lily is your granddaughter, your flesh and blood, a 10-year-old child who walked home alone in the dark on Christmas Eve because her grandmother couldn't be bothered to make space for her. My father's face crumpled. I know it was wrong. I tried to tell Carol, but she was so stressed about the party about making everything perfect. By the time I realized what had happened, Lily was already gone. You could have come after her. You could have called. You could have done something. I should have. You're right. I should have. He looked up at me with those watery eyes. Emily, I'm sorry. I'm truly sorry. Not just about Lily, but about everything. About all the years we didn't appreciate you. About always favoring Sarah. About taking your money without ever saying thank you. I wanted to believe him. I wanted so badly to believe that this was real, that my father was finally seeing me, finally understanding the damage they'd done. But I'd been down this road before. How many times had they made promises? How many times had they said they'd do better only to fall back into the same patterns? Dad, do you know what the worst part of all this is? I asked. It's not the money. It's not even the favoritism. It's that you never once asked me how I was doing. In 12 years of me paying your mortgage, you never asked if I could afford it, if it was putting strain on my marriage, if it meant Lily was going without things. You just took and took and took, and it never occurred to you that there might be a cost. We thought you wanted to help. We thought it made you happy. I wanted you to love me, Dad. I wanted you to see me as a daughter, not a bank account. And when you couldn't even make room for my daughter at a Christmas party when you let her stand on that porch alone, and afraid I realized that you never will. So that's it. You're just cutting us off completely after everything. After everything, I repeated incredulously. Dad, I gave you everything. I gave you a house, 12 years of financial support, the best health insurance money could buy. I gave you my time, my energy, my hope. And what did you give me? Criticism, disappointment, the message over and over that I would never be enough. That's not true, isn't it? When I graduated nursing school, you asked why I didn't become a doctor. When I bought you a house, you complained that it didn't have a garage. When I paid for Mom's kitchen remodel, she said I should have chosen better countertops. Nothing I ever did was good enough, and I kept trying anyway because I was stupid enough to think that one day you'd wake up and realize that I was worth loving. My father was crying openly now. "Emily, please. We're old. We have nowhere else to go. Don't do this." And that's when I realized something important. He wasn't sorry for hurting me. He wasn't sorry for Lily. He was sorry that the money had stopped. This wasn't an apology. This was a negotiation. "You have 3 weeks left in the house," I said, standing up. "That's more than enough time to figure something out. Sarah has a spare room. You have Social Security and pension checks. You'll survive." "Sarah's house is too small. She can barely manage with Chloe. We can't." "Then rent an apartment. Get a studio. Figure it out like millions of other retirees do. I'm not your retirement plan anymore, Dad. I'm done." "Emily, wait." But I was already leaving. I walked out of that conference room back onto the ER floor and threw myself into work. I had patients who needed me, people who appreciated what I did for them, even if it was just holding their hand while we waited for test results. My father didn't follow me. By the time my shift ended 6 hours later, he was gone. That night, I came home to find David pacing in the living room, his phone in his hand. He looked worried. "What's wrong?" I asked. "Sarah has been calling over and over. Emily, she sounds really scared." "Scared of what?" "She said your mom has been talking about hurting herself. About how if you're going to take everything away from them, she doesn't see the point in living." My blood ran cold. This was exactly the kind of manipulation I should have expected, but hearing it still hit like a punch to the gut. "She's not going to hurt herself," I said, but I wasn't entirely sure. "How do you know?" "Because she's done this before. When I was in high school, I tried to go to college out of state. She said if I left, she'd have a heart attack from the stress and it would be my fault. She didn't have a heart attack. She just wanted me to stay close so I could help take care of her." "But Emily, what if this time is different? What if she actually—" "Then that's her choice," I said, and I heard how cold I sounded. "David, I can't live my life being held hostage by threats. If she's genuinely suicidal, she needs professional help, not my money. And if she's manipulating us, which I strongly suspect she is, then giving in just teaches her that threats work." "What do you want to do?" I thought about it, really thought about it. Every cell in my body was screaming at me to call my mother to check on her to make sure she was okay. That's what 35 years of conditioning does to you. But I knew that if I called, if I showed any weakness, the cycle would start all over again. "We call for a welfare check," I said finally. "We tell the police that someone is making threats of self-harm and needs to be evaluated. If she's serious, they'll get her help. If she's manipulating, she'll be angry, but she'll be fine." David nodded slowly. "Okay, we'll do that." He called the police non-emergency line and explained the situation. 2 officers went to my parents' house and found my mother sitting in her kitchen drinking tea and complaining to my father about me. No signs of self-harm, no immediate danger, just manipulation. The officer who called us back sounded almost amused. "Your mother is fine, ma'am. She's upset, but she's not in any danger. She seems more angry than depressed, if I'm being honest." "Thank you, officer. I appreciate you checking on her." "No problem. But ma'am, I've been doing this job for 20 years. I've seen a lot of family drama, and from what I can tell, you're doing the right thing setting boundaries. Don't let guilt make you go back on that." After I hung up, I felt something shift inside me. The last thread of doubt snapped. They weren't just hurt or confused. They were actively trying to manipulate me into continuing to fund their lifestyle using suicide threats and guilt trips and anything else they could think of. I was done feeling guilty. The next 2 weeks were a nightmare of escalation. My mother started calling my workplace, trying to get me in trouble with my supervisors by claiming I was mentally unstable and making dangerous decisions at work. My HR department called me in concerned, but after I explained the situation and showed them the legal documents, they were supportive. Sarah showed up at Lily's school trying to pick her up, claiming there was a family emergency. The school called me immediately, and I had to add her to the list of people not authorized to collect my daughter. Lily was terrified, and I had to explain to a 10-year-old why her aunt couldn't be trusted. My father started sending letters to our neighbors, explaining that his mentally ill daughter was cruelly evicting her elderly parents and asking if anyone could help talk sense into me. A few neighbors came by to ask about it, but when they heard the full story, they were appalled at my parents' behavior. The campaign of harassment was so intense that I started documenting everything. Every phone call, every message, every encounter. My lawyer said it might be necessary if they tried to fight the eviction in court or filed any kind of legal action against me. But through it all, I held firm. Every time I felt myself weakening, I thought about Lily's face on Christmas Eve. I thought about all the years I'd spent trying to earn love that was never going to come. And I stayed strong. Finally, with 1 week left before the eviction deadline, Sarah called. Not screaming, not crying, not threatening, just defeated. "Emily," she said, "can we talk? Please, I'll come to you. I'll come alone. No mom, no dad, just me and you." I almost said no, but something in her voice made me agree. "Fine. Tomorrow at 2, we'll meet at the coffee shop on Main Street, public place." "Thank you," she said quietly and hung up. The next day, I arrived at the coffee shop 15 minutes early, needing time to prepare myself mentally. Sarah showed up exactly on time, and I was shocked by her appearance. She looked like she'd aged 5 years in 2 weeks. Her hair was limp, her clothes were wrinkled, and she had dark circles under her eyes that rivaled my own after a double shift. She sat down across from me without ordering anything. For a long moment, we just looked at each other. "Thank you for meeting me," she finally said. "You said we needed to talk, so talk." Sarah took a deep breath. "Mom and Dad are moving in with me. They refused to look for an apartment, refused to plan, just kept insisting that you'd change your mind. So now with 4 days left, I'm their only option." "Okay," I said neutrally. "Okay?" She looked at me incredulously. "That's all you have to say? I have a 2-bedroom house, Emily. 2 bedrooms. One for me, one for Chloe. Where exactly am I supposed to put our parents?" "That sounds like a problem you'll need to solve." "How can you be so cold? These are our parents." "Sarah, they're moving in with you because they refused to make any other plans. They gambled that I'd cave, that I'd feel guilty enough to let them stay. They lost that gamble. The consequences of their choices are not my responsibility. They're old Emily. Dad can barely walk upstairs. Mom needs her medications. They can't just—" Then they should have thought about that before they turned away their granddaughter on Christmas Eve. They should have thought about that before they spent 12 years taking my money without a single word of appreciation. They should have thought about that before they launched a harassment campaign against me and my family. Sarah's face hardened. "So this is revenge?" "No," I said calmly. "This is boundaries. This is me finally understanding that I don't owe my entire life to people who have never valued me. They do value you. They're just bad at showing it. For 35 years, they've been bad at showing it for my entire life. At some point, Sarah bad at showing it just becomes not feeling it at all. So what, you're just going to let them struggle? Let them figure out how to survive on Social Security?" "Yes," I said simply. "That's exactly what I'm going to do. Millions of people survive on Social Security. They'll figure it out." Sarah stood up abruptly. "You know what, I was wrong. I thought maybe there was still some part of my sister left in there. But you've turned into someone I don't even recognize." "Good," I said, "because the person you recognized was a doormat who let you and our parents walk all over her for decades. I like who I'm becoming a lot better." She stared at me for another moment, her mouth opening and closing like a fish out of water, trying to find words that wouldn't come. Then she turned and walked out, her bathrobe flapping behind her, leaving a trail of shredded paper on my walkway. I watched her get into her car, an old sedan that I'd paid to repair at least 5 times over the years, and drive away. I sat there for a while longer drinking my coffee, feeling surprisingly calm. David came downstairs, took one look at my face, and wrapped his arms around me without saying a word. That's what I needed. Not questions, not reassurance, just presence. 3 days later, the eviction went through. I wasn't there, but my lawyer sent me photos throughout the process. The first photo showed a sheriff's deputy knocking on the door at 8 in the morning. The second showed my mother standing in the doorway in her nightgown, her face a mask of shock and disbelief, as if she still couldn't believe this was actually happening. The third showed my father loading boxes into Sarah's SUV, his movements slow and defeated. The fourth photo was the one that stuck with me. It showed the living room completely empty except for the indentations in the carpet where furniture had sat for 12 years. The walls had lighter rectangles where family photos had hung photos that had never included me unless absolutely necessary. The house looked sad, abandoned, like it had been waiting all this time to belong to someone who would actually appreciate it. The locks were changed by noon. My parents were officially homeless. They moved into Sarah's house that same day, cramming themselves and all their possessions into her small 2-bedroom home. I heard later that they'd argued for 2 hours about where to put everything, with my mother insisting her antique dresser had to go in the living room, and my father demanding space for his recliner that had practically molded to his body shape over the years. I put the house on the market immediately. My realtor suggested waiting a few weeks, letting me process everything, but I didn't want to process it. I wanted it done. I wanted that chapter closed with a definitive period, not a tentative ellipsis. A young couple bought it within a week. Their names were Marcus and Jennifer, and they were expecting their first child. Jennifer cried when she saw the nursery, the room that had been my father's office, the room where he'd spent hours online complaining about me in family chat groups. She said it was perfect, that she could already see where the crib would go, where she'd rock her baby to sleep. She had no idea that room had been filled with nothing but resentment and entitlement for over a decade. The sale was quick. Marcus and Jennifer were pre-approved for their mortgage, had their inspection done within 48 hours, and wanted to close as soon as possible. 3 weeks after I'd served the eviction notice, I was signing closing papers. The money transferred into my account, and just like that, the physical symbol of 12 years of sacrifice was gone. The house belonged to people who would love it, who would fill it with laughter instead of demands, who would make it a home instead of a monument to dysfunction. I sat in the lawyer's office after signing the last document, staring at my phone where my banking app showed the deposit. $345,000. That's what the house had sold for, minus closing costs and my lawyer's fees. $345,000 that represented every mortgage payment, every repair, every upgrade I'd funded. I divided the money into 3 equal portions. $115,000 went into Lily's college fund. She was 10 years old, and with this money plus what we'd already saved, she could go to any school she wanted without drowning in student loans the way I had. She could study what she loved without worrying about scholarships or part-time jobs, or choosing a major based on earning potential instead of passion. Another $115,000 went into our retirement savings. David and I had been putting off saving for our future, always telling ourselves we'd start next year after we got through this current crisis, after we helped my parents one more time. Now, we didn't have to put it off anymore. Now we could actually plan for a future that wasn't defined by supporting other people. The final $115,000 stayed liquid, sitting in a high-yield savings account as an emergency fund. Not because I thought I'd need it for my parents. That door was closed and locked. But because I never wanted to be in a position where I was dependent on anyone else. I never wanted to be so financially strapped that I had to accept help from people who would use it as leverage, who would hold it over my head, who would make me feel like I owed them my entire life in exchange for basic support. For the first time in 12 years, I looked at my bank account and felt like I could breathe, really breathe. Not the shallow, anxious breathing I'd been doing for over a decade, always worried about the next bill, the next crisis, the next demand, but deep, full breaths that filled my lungs and made me feel alive. David took me out to dinner that night. Not anywhere fancy, just a little Italian place we'd gone to on our first date back before kids, before mortgages, before family drama consumed our lives. We sat in a corner booth and he raised his glass of wine to me. "To freedom," he said simply. "To freedom," I echoed, and we clinked glasses. But the story didn't end there, because 2 weeks after my parents moved in with Sarah, she called me again. It was 9 o'clock at night, past Lily's bedtime, and I almost didn't answer. But something made me pick up. "Emily!" Sarah's voice was barely recognizable. No anger, no demands, just exhaustion and desperation. "Emily, please, I need help." "What kind of help?" I asked, already knowing I wouldn't provide it. "I can't do this," she sobbed, and I could hear genuine tears now, not the manipulative crying she'd perfected as a child. "Emily, I really can't do this. They're driving me insane. Actually insane. I'm losing my mind." "What's happening?" "Everything Mom criticizes, everything I do. This morning she told me my coffee tastes like dirty water and demanded I buy the expensive brand she likes. The brand that costs $25 a pound. When I said I couldn't afford it, she said if I managed my money better, I could. This from a woman who hasn't paid her own bills in 12 years. I stayed silent, letting her continue. "She says my house is too small." "Well, no kidding, Mom. It's a 2-bedroom house for 3 people, and now there are 5. "She says my cooking is terrible. She literally threw away a casserole I'd spent 2 hours making because it wasn't seasoned properly. She tells Chloe that I'm raising her wrong, that I'm too permissive, that she's spoiled. Chloe is starting to talk back to me now because Grandma keeps undermining me. What about Dad? I asked. Dad? Sarah laughed hysterically. Dad watches TV at full volume all night. All night, Emily. He falls asleep in his recliner, the one we had to shove against the wall in my living room, and the TV blares until 3 in the morning. When I turn it down, he wakes up and yells at me. When I ask him to go to bed, he says he's comfortable where he is. I haven't had a full night's sleep in 2 weeks. Have you talked to them about this? Talked to them? Of course I've talked to them. Do you know what Mom says? She says this is temporary, that you'll come around eventually, that you're just going through a phase. She's convinced that any day now you'll call and apologize and give them money for their own place. She sits by the phone every day waiting for you to call, and when you don't, she takes it out on me. And you want me to do what exactly? I don't know, Sarah cried. Just something. They refuse to help with anything. They won't do dishes, won't clean up after themselves, won't even take their plates to the sink. They just sit around all day complaining about you and expecting me to wait on them hand and foot like I'm their personal servant. Mom actually rang a bell at me yesterday, a bell like I'm staff. I felt something then. Not sympathy exactly, but a grim sort of vindication. Welcome to my world, Sarah. Welcome to the life I lived for 12 years. Then ask them to leave. I said, my voice neutral. Where would they go, Emily? They have no money. They literally have nothing except their Social Security and Dad's pension. They have Social Security and pension checks. They can rent a studio apartment. Plenty of seniors do it. With what deposit? With what first and last month's rent? They need at least $3,000 to get into a decent place, and they don't have it. Emily, please, just help them get started. Just pay the deposit on an apartment. Just help them move out. That's all I'm asking. I'm not asking you to support them forever. Just help them get out of my house. No. The word hung in the air between us. Emily, please. I'm begging you. I have never begged you for anything in my life, but I'm begging now. I cannot do this anymore. I'm going to have a breakdown. My boss pulled me aside yesterday to ask if everything was okay because I've been so distracted at work. Chloe is acting out at school. My whole life is falling apart. Sarah, I said, and my voice was still calm, still measured. Do you remember when we were kids and I asked you to stop telling Mom that I was the one who broke her favorite vase, even though it was actually you? Do you remember what you said? Silence, long, heavy silence. I remember that vase, I continued. The blue one with the white flowers. She'd inherited it from her grandmother. It was one of the only things she really treasured. You knocked it off the shelf when you were dancing around the living room, even though we were both supposed to be in bed. It shattered into 100 pieces. Emily, I was 10 years old. I was 8. I was 8 years old when you told me to hide in my room and not say anything. You said you'd handle it. And then when Mom came downstairs and saw it, you pointed at me and said I did it. You said you saw me throw a ball at it. Mom didn't even question it. She just believed you. I don't remember it that way. Of course you don't, because it was convenient to forget. Mom grounded me for a month, took away my birthday party that year as punishment, and when I came to you crying, begging you to tell the truth, do you know what you said? Silence again. You said, not my problem. You should have stayed in your room. Those were your exact words. Not my problem. You were the one who broke it, but I was the one who paid the price. And you didn't care because it didn't affect you. That was 25 years ago, Emily. We were children. You're right. We were children. But the pattern didn't stop there, did it? When you needed money for your first apartment, who co-signed the lease? When you couldn't make rent, who covered it for 3 months? When you got divorced and needed somewhere to stay, whose couch did you sleep on? Mine, Sarah. Always mine. And every single time you promised you'd pay me back, and you never did, because in your mind it wasn't your problem, it was mine. I didn't have the money. No, you didn't, because you spent it on clothes and dinners out and whatever else you wanted instead of taking responsibility for your life. And I enabled it. I enabled all of it, just like I enabled Mom and Dad, but I'm done enabling now. So you're going to punish me for things that happened decades ago. I'm not punishing you. I'm saying the same thing to you that you said to me all those years ago. This is not my problem. You chose to let them move in. You chose to enable them. You deal with it. Emily, please, I'm your sister. Doesn't that mean anything to you? You know what's funny, Sarah? You've never acted like my sister. You've acted like my competitor, my bully, and occasionally my tenant. But never my sister. Sisters support each other. Sisters have each other's backs. Sisters don't laugh when the other one's daughter gets turned away on Christmas Eve. I didn't laugh. You were there. You saw it happen. You did nothing. That's just as bad as laughing. I didn't know what to do. You could have said something. You could have told Mom that turning away a 10-year-old child was wrong. You could have offered to take Lily home yourself. You could have done literally anything other than sit there eating cookies while my daughter walked home alone in the dark. But you didn't because it was easier not to. Because getting involved would have been uncomfortable for you. Because it wasn't your problem. I hate you, she said, her voice breaking. You've always hated me, I replied, and I felt nothing. No pain, no anger, just truth. You just needed me too much to admit it. You needed someone to bail you out, to lend you money to cover for you to be the responsible one so you didn't have to be. Now you don't need me anymore, so you're free to be honest. Fine. Fine. If that's how you want it, then we're done. You'll never hear from me again. And when Mom and Dad die alone, because you abandoned them, I hope you can live with that. I can, I said simply. Can you? She hung up on me. I stood there holding the phone, staring at the blank screen. David came into the kitchen, concern on his face.
You okay?
He asked. Yeah, I said, and I meant it. I really am. I went back to making dinner. I was trying a new recipe chicken marsala, something Lily had requested after trying it at a friend's house. The kitchen smelled like garlic and mushrooms and wine. Normal smells, peaceful smells, the sounds of a regular Wednesday night, not a crisis or a confrontation or a demand for money. Lily came downstairs a few minutes later, homework finished, and set the table without being asked. She was humming to herself something she'd learned in music class. David poured wine for us and milk for Lily. We ate together, talking about her day, about a science project she was excited about David's new client at work. Nobody mentioned my family. Nobody mentioned the phone call. Nobody mentioned the drama that had dominated so much of our lives for so long. We just existed together peacefully, and it was the most beautiful thing in the world. A month passed, then another. I heard through Aunt Betty that things had deteriorated rapidly at Sarah's house. My mother and father had become even more demanding, treating Sarah's home like a hotel and Sarah like staff. They refused to contribute to groceries or utilities. They left messes everywhere. My mother had apparently redecorated Sarah's living room without permission, throwing out furniture Sarah had bought and replacing it with her own. The final straw came when my father had another smaller heart episode, and the ambulance couldn't navigate through all the clutter in the house to get to him quickly. Sarah had finally snapped. I heard through Aunt Betty that Sarah had finally managed to evict our parents, too. She'd given them 2 weeks' notice and stuck to it, apparently, having learned something from watching me. When they refused to leave, she called the police and had them removed. Aunt Betty said there'd been a huge scene with my mother screaming that Sarah was just as ungrateful and horrible as I was, that she'd raised 2 terrible daughters, that she must have done something wrong to deserve children like us. They were now living in a rundown studio apartment on the edge of town, one of those places with stained carpets and thin walls and neighbors who played music too loud at all hours. They were surviving on their Social Security and my father's pension, which amounted to about $1,800 a month after Medicare premiums. It was enough to cover rent and basic expenses, but nothing extra. No cable TV, no internet, no eating out, no luxuries. According to Aunt Betty, my mother had started a fundraiser online telling a sob story about how her daughters had abandoned her in her old age. She'd raised maybe $300 before people started asking questions, and the truth came out. Then the donations stopped, and some people even demanded their money back. Aunt Betty asked if I wanted to know more details, if I wanted to know exactly where they were living, what they were doing, how they were managing. I said no, and I meant it. At work, I threw myself into my job with renewed energy. Without the constant drain of supporting my parents financially and emotionally, I had space in my life for other things. Space to think, space to breathe, space to be something other than a walking wallet with a guilt complex. I volunteered to mentor new nurses, 3 young women fresh out of nursing school, wide-eyed and terrified of making mistakes. I remembered that fear of not being enough. I taught them not just about medical procedures and hospital protocols, but about boundaries, about not taking on shifts you didn't have the energy for just because someone asked, about saying no to doctors who were being unreasonable, about protecting yourself so you could protect your patients. I took continuing education classes, advanced cardiac life support, trauma nursing, pediatric emergency care, classes I'd been meaning to take for years but never had the time or money for because everything went to my parents. Now I had both. I started a support group at the hospital for medical professionals dealing with family estrangement. I'd mentioned it casually in the break room one day how I'd recently cut off my parents and was dealing with the aftermath. I expected awkward silence or judgment. Instead, 3 of my coworkers immediately asked if they could talk to me privately. The group was small at first, just the 4 of us meeting in an unused conference room on the 3rd floor. We brought coffee and sat in a circle and shared our stories. There was Jennifer, an anesthesiologist who hadn't spoken to her mother in 5 years after her mother showed up drunk at her wedding. There was Marcus, a physician's assistant whose brother kept borrowing money and never paying it back. There was Angela, another nurse whose sister had stolen her identity and destroyed her credit. But the group grew. Apparently, cutting off toxic family members was more common than I'd realized, especially among healthcare workers who were used to being needed, being dependent on being the ones who fixed everything. We met twice a month, sharing our stories, our struggles, our guilt, our liberation. We celebrated boundaries and victories. We supported each other through holidays and birthdays and the hard moments when you wondered if you'd made the right choice. It helped to know I wasn't alone. It helped to hear other people's stories and realize that my situation wasn't unique, that I wasn't a monster, that choosing yourself over family dysfunction wasn't selfish. It was survival. Lily thrived in ways I hadn't anticipated. Without the anxiety of trying to please grandparents who would never be pleased, she relaxed. The tension I'd seen in her shoulders, the worry in her eyes when we talked about family visits, all of it melted away. Her grades improved dramatically. She'd always been a good student, but now she was excelling. She made honor roll for the first time. Her teacher called to tell me that Lily had become more confident in class, raising her hand more often, participating in discussions, no longer afraid to be wrong. She made new friends. Real friends, not just kids she hung out with out of convenience. She had sleepovers and birthday parties and playdates that she actually looked forward to. She laughed more genuine belly laughs that made her whole face light up. She smiled more, not the anxious smile she used to give when she was trying to please someone, but a real unguarded smile that came from actual happiness. She started playing soccer and discovered she was actually pretty good at it. I went to every single one of her games, standing on the sidelines with David cheering her on. She scored her first goal in late April, a beautiful shot from the corner that sailed right past the goalie's outstretched hands. The joy on her face when she turned to see if we'd witnessed it, that pure, uncomplicated joy, made everything I'd been through worth it. She stopped asking why Grandma and Grandpa didn't love her as much as they loved Chloe. That question had broken my heart every time she'd asked it, and I'd never known how to answer it honestly without destroying something in her. But now, she didn't need an answer. She'd figured out on her own that their lack of love said nothing about her worth and everything about their capacity for love. David and I grew closer. The stress of managing my parents' constant needs and demands had been putting a strain on our marriage that I hadn't fully recognized until it was gone. We'd been partners in survival united against a common enemy, but somewhere along the way, we'd stopped being partners in joy. With that pressure gone, we rediscovered why we'd fallen in love in the first place. We started having date nights again, actually leaving Lily with a babysitter and going out like we were young and free. We went to the movies, we tried new restaurants, we took a cooking class together and laughed our way through attempting to make sushi. We took a weekend trip to the beach, just the 2 of us. It was the first time we'd been away together without Lily in years. We stayed in a little bed and breakfast, walked along the shore at sunset, sat on the balcony drinking wine and talking about nothing and everything. We talked about things other than bills and family drama. We talked about our dreams, our hopes, our plans for a future that suddenly seemed possible again. "Are you happy?" David asked me on the last night of that trip, lying in bed with the windows open and the sound of waves in the distance. I thought about it, really thought about it. "Yes," I said, surprised by how true it was. "I really am. No regrets. Not about cutting them off. Maybe about how long I waited to do it. Maybe about all the years I wasted trying to buy love from people who were never going to give it to me. But the actual decision, no regrets at all. He pulled me closer, kissing the top of my head. Good, because I'm really proud of you. I know that doesn't fix anything, but I want you to know. What you did took incredible courage. And maybe it did. Or maybe it was just survival. Maybe courage and survival were the same thing sometimes. Life got better. Not perfect, not problem-free, but better. Lighter. Freer. But I'd be lying if I said it was easy. The guilt crept in at unexpected moments. I'd see an elderly couple at the grocery store and wonder if my parents were okay. I'd hear a song my mother used to love and feel a pang of something that might have been sadness. I'd watch Lily playing with her friends and think about how she'd never have grandparents at her graduation, her wedding, the birth of her children. The hardest day was Mother's Day. I woke up to find a card on my nightstand from Lily, handmade and covered in glitter. To the best mom in the world, it said. David had helped her make me breakfast in bed. It should have been perfect. But I couldn't stop thinking about my own mother alone in that studio apartment, probably waiting for a call that would never come. I imagined her sitting by the phone getting angrier and angrier as the hours passed, and I didn't reach out. "You okay?" David asked, watching me push scrambled eggs around my plate. "I don't know," I admitted. "Part of me wants to call her, just to say Happy Mother's Day, to check if she's okay. And the other part remembers that she's made her bed and now she has to lie in it. That calling her would just open a door I've worked so hard to close. What does your gut tell you?" I thought about it. Really thought about it. My gut tells me that if I call, she won't say thank you. She won't say she misses me. She'll demand to know when I'm going to stop being ridiculous and start helping them again. And I'll feel worse than I do right now. Then don't call. So I didn't. I spent the day with my own daughter being the mother to her that mine had never been to me. And by the time I went to bed that night, the guilt had faded. Summer came. Lily went to a summer camp for kids interested in science. Not the expensive one that Chloe had wanted to attend, but a good one that Lily had chosen herself. She came home every day bursting with stories about experiments and new friends and things she'd learned. "Mom," she said one evening sitting next to me on the porch, "I'm glad I didn't go to Grandma's house on Christmas." I was so surprised I almost dropped my glass of iced tea. "What, honey, why would you say that?" "Because if I had gone, you would have kept paying for everything and we'd still have to see them. And they made you sad, Mom. They made you really sad, I could tell." "Lily, you shouldn't have to worry about—" "I'm not worried," she interrupted. "I'm just glad, because now you smile more, and we can do fun stuff like my science camp, and we don't have to have those awful Sunday dinners where Grandma was mean to you and Chloe was mean to me." I pulled her into a hug, fighting back tears. "You're pretty smart, you know that." "I get it from you," she said matter-of-factly. "Grandma always said I got it from you, and she didn't mean it as a compliment. But I think being smart like you is the best thing ever." That night, after Lily went to bed, I cried. Not from sadness, but from relief. My daughter was okay. More than okay. She understood in her own way that sometimes you have to cut out toxic people even when they're family. I'd been so afraid that my decision would damage her, would teach her that love was conditional. But instead, she'd learned that love means protecting yourself and the people you care about from those who hurt you. Fall arrived, and with it came a surprise. My father had a heart attack. Not a fatal one, but serious enough that he was hospitalized for 3 days. Sarah called to tell me, her voice flat and emotionless. "Dad's in the hospital," she said. "Room 412 at St. Mary's. Thought you should know." "Is he going to be okay?" I asked. "Probably. They're keeping him for observation. Mom is there with him." A pause. "She's asking for you." My heart clenched. It wasn't it. The test. The moment where I either proved I was truly done or revealed that all my boundaries were just for show. "Tell her I hope Dad recovers quickly," I said. "That's it, you're not coming." "No, Sarah, I'm not coming. He's your father. He could have died. And if he had died, I would have dealt with that. But he's going to be fine, and me showing up at the hospital won't change that. All it will do is reset every boundary I've spent the last 6 months establishing." "So you're really just done forever." I thought about it. Really thought about it. "I don't know if it's forever. Maybe someday they'll actually apologize. Actually take responsibility for how they treated me and Lily. Actually change their behavior. If that happens, maybe we can rebuild something, but until then, yes, I'm done." Sarah hung up without saying goodbye. I sat on my couch staring at my phone, waiting for the guilt to overwhelm me. It didn't come. Oh, I felt something. Sadness, maybe. Grief for the father I'd wished I had, the one who would have loved me unconditionally and treated my daughter with kindness. But guilt, no. I'd made my choice, and it was the right one. I didn't go to the hospital. I didn't send flowers. I didn't call. I simply went on with my life, and it felt okay. Not good, not triumphant, but okay. Like I was finally learning that not everything required my immediate action and attention. My father recovered. He went home after 3 days with new medications and strict orders to change his lifestyle. I heard he blamed his heart attack on the stress I'd caused him by cutting them off. I heard he told everyone at church that his ungrateful daughter had nearly killed him. I heard, and I didn't care. Aunt Betty called a few weeks later. "Your mom is telling everyone that you refused to visit your father on his deathbed even though he wasn't anywhere near his deathbed. Just thought you should know what's being said." "Thanks for the heads up," I said. "But Betty, I've stopped caring what she tells people. The people who matter know the truth. The people who don't matter will believe whatever they want to believe regardless." "You sound good," she said. "Stronger than I've ever heard you." "I am stronger," I agreed. Turns out cutting out the people who were dragging me down was exactly what I needed. "Well, for what it's worth, I'm proud of you. It takes real courage to do what you did." That meant more to me than she could have known. The holidays rolled around again. Christmas. The anniversary of the night that changed everything. I'd been dreading it, expecting a flood of memories and guilt and what-ifs. But it was actually perfect. Just me, David, and Lily. We decorated the tree together, baked cookies, watched holiday movies. On Christmas Eve, we drove around looking at lights. On Christmas morning, we opened presents and made a huge breakfast and played board games all day. There were no calls from my parents, no dramatic confrontations, no guilt trips or manipulation attempts. Just peace, just family. The real kind of family, the kind that lifts you up instead of tearing you down. "This is the best Christmas ever," Lily said, curled up next to me on the couch that evening. "Yeah," I asked. "What makes it so special?" "Nobody's mad, nobody's mean. We're all just happy." She looked up at me with those wise eyes. "Last Christmas was awful at first, but it ended up being the best thing that happened, because now we have this." I hugged her tight, marveling at how perceptive she was. "You're absolutely right, baby. Last Christmas was a gift, even if it didn't feel like it at the time." "Do you miss them?" she asked. "Grandma and Grandpa." "Sometimes," I admitted. "I miss who I wished they were, but I don't miss who they actually were. Does that make sense?" She nodded. "Like how I miss having grandparents, but I don't miss those grandparents specifically." Exactly like that. We sat in comfortable silence for a while, watching the lights twinkle on the tree. This was healing, I realized. This quiet, peaceful moment with my daughter. This was what I'd been fighting for. This was why I'd done everything I'd done. And I didn't regret it, not one bit. Winter turned to spring again. A full year had passed since the eviction. A full year since I'd last spoken to my parents. A full year of freedom. I got a letter in the mail one day. No return address, but I recognized my mother's handwriting. I stared at it for a long time, debating whether to open it or just throw it away. Finally, curiosity won. I opened it. The letter was 3 pages long, front and back. It started with how much they were suffering, how unfair I was being, how I'd destroyed their lives over nothing. The same old guilt trip, the same old manipulation. I almost stopped reading. But then on the last page, there was something different. "I suppose we could have treated you better," my mother had written. "Sarah says we favored her, and I suppose that might be true, but you were always so independent, so capable. You didn't seem to need us the way she did, and maybe we took advantage of that. Maybe we took advantage of you." It wasn't an apology. Not really. It was barely an acknowledgement, but it was more than she'd ever given me before. The letter continued. "Your father's health isn't good. The doctors say he might not have much time left. I know you probably don't care, but I thought you should know. If you decide you want to see him before it's too late, you know where to find us." I folded the letter and put it back in the envelope. I didn't cry. I didn't feel the overwhelming rush of guilt I might have felt a year ago. I just felt tired. I showed the letter to David that night. "What are you going to do?" he asked. I don't know, I admitted. Part of me wants to go see him, to try one more time, but part of me knows that going back now would undo everything I've accomplished. And for what, a half apology that still manages to blame me for being too independent? You don't have to decide right now, David said. Sleep on it. See how you feel in the morning. But I already knew how I'd feel. I'd feel the same way I felt now. Conflicted but resolved. Sad but strong. Guilty but justified. I didn't go to see my father. I didn't call. I didn't respond to the letter. I simply continued living my life and it felt okay. 2 years have passed since that Christmas Eve. 2 years since I walked away from a lifetime of being invisible, of being used, of being less than. 2 years since I chose my daughter over everyone else. My parents are still in that studio apartment. I hear updates occasionally through the family grapevine, though less frequently now. They're still bitter, still playing the victim, still claiming they did nothing wrong. They've alienated most of the extended family by constantly demanding sympathy and support, while refusing to take any responsibility for their role in how things ended. My father's health continues to decline slowly, but he's still alive, still complaining, still blaming me for all his problems. Sarah and I haven't spoken since that phone call about Dad's heart attack. I heard through Aunt Betty that she's struggling financially, that Chloe has been having behavioral issues at school. Part of me feels bad about that, but only a small part. Sarah made her choices just like I made mine. She chose to enable our parents' behavior for years. She chose to laugh when Lily was turned away on Christmas Eve. She chose to take their side in every conflict. Those choices have consequences. Chloe, I heard, has started asking about Lily. Apparently, she misses her cousin, misses the family gatherings we used to have. Sarah told her that I'm the one who tore the family apart, that I'm too stubborn and angry to forgive. I wonder what Chloe thinks about that. I wonder if she remembers laughing while Lily stood on that porch in the cold. But mostly, I don't think about them at all anymore. That's the strangest part, really. For 35 years, my family was the center of my universe, the source of all my pain and all my desperate attempts to fix things. And now, they're just people I used to know. People I used to be related to. The grief comes in waves sometimes, but it's manageable. It's not the crushing weight it used to be. Lily is thriving. She's 12 now, confident and happy in ways I never was at her age. She's on the honor roll, has good friends, plays soccer. She's starting to talk about what she wants to be when she grows up, and it changes every week. Doctor, scientist, teacher, engineer. She's got the grades and the drive to be any of those things. She knows she's loved unconditionally, not for what she can provide or how well she performs, but simply for being herself. That's the greatest gift I can give her, breaking the cycle of conditional love that defined my own childhood. The money from selling that house went into Lily's college fund. Every month I add more to it, money that used to go to my parents' mortgage and bills. She'll have opportunities I never did, a future unburdened by the need to constantly prove her worth. Sometimes I think about what I could have done with that $300,000 if I'd saved it instead of spending it on people who never appreciated it. But I try not to dwell on that. You can't get back the past. You can only choose how to move forward. David and I are solid, stronger than we've ever been. He never once questioned my decision, never tried to talk me out of it, never suggested I was being too harsh. He saw what they did to our daughter and he understood. Having a partner who supports you unconditionally, who has your back even when the rest of the world thinks you're wrong, that's worth more than any family connection based on obligation and guilt. Last month, we went to parent-teacher conferences at Lily's school. Her teacher gushed about how well-adjusted she is, how kind to other students, how she stands up for kids who are being bullied. Whatever you're doing at home, the teacher said, keep doing it. Lily is a remarkable young woman. On the drive home, Lily was quiet. Finally, she said, Mom, do you think Grandma and Grandpa ever regret what they did? I thought about that letter, about my mother's half-acknowledgement that maybe they could have treated me better. I think they regret the consequences, I said carefully. I think they regret not having money and not having family members who will support them. But do they regret how they treated us? How they made you feel that night? I don't know, baby. I honestly don't know. I don't think they do, Lily said wisely. Because if they really regretted it, they would have apologized. Like, really apologized. Not just said sorry that you got upset, but sorry for what they did. My 12-year-old daughter understood more about accountability than my 70-year-old parents ever would. I'd done something right, at least. People ask me sometimes if I regret it, if I went too far, if I should have tried to work it out to reconcile to give them another chance. They ask if I think about them, if I worry about them, if I feel guilty. The truth is complicated. Yes, I think about them. You don't erase 35 years of history with a legal eviction notice. There are moments when I see an elderly couple at the grocery store and wonder if they're okay, if they have enough to eat, if they're warm enough. The programming runs deep. Sometimes I have dreams where I'm back in their house trying desperately to fix something that keeps breaking, and I wake up with my heart racing. But regret, no. I don't regret protecting my daughter. I don't regret refusing to continue funding their lifestyle while being treated like an inconvenience. I don't regret choosing to invest in my own family, my own future, rather than pouring money into a bottomless pit of dysfunction and ingratitude. Did I go too far? I don't think so. I think I went exactly as far as I needed to go to break free. Some people can set boundaries with family and maintain relationships. Some people can find a middle ground. But my family didn't do middle ground. They did all or nothing. They wanted complete control, complete access to my finances, complete freedom to treat me however they wanted without consequences. So I chose nothing. And in choosing nothing with them, I chose everything with the people who truly matter. My support group at the hospital has grown to 15 regular members now. Doctors, nurses, technicians, all of us trying to navigate the complicated terrain of family estrangement. We share our stories, our struggles, our victories. Last week, a new member broke down crying, saying she felt like a monster for cutting off her mother. The whole group rallied around her, sharing similar experiences, validating her decision. "You're not a monster," I told her. "Monsters don't agonize over whether they're doing the right thing. Monsters don't feel guilty. The fact that you're here, the fact that you're struggling with this, that proves you're not a monster. You're just someone who finally put on their own oxygen mask first." She looked at me with red, swollen eyes. "Does it get easier?" "Yes," I said honestly. "It gets easier. The guilt fades. The doubt fades. And what's left is just peace. It takes time, but it happens." I believed that because I was living it. Every day got a little easier. Every day I felt a little less guilty and a little more free. This morning I woke up to birds singing outside my window. I made coffee, sat on the porch, and watched the sunrise. Lily came down a little later, still sleepy, and curled up next to me on the porch swing. "Love you, Mom," she said, half asleep. "Love you too, baby." And I realized something profound in that moment. I am enough. Not because of what I give, not because of what I provide, not because of how much I sacrifice. I'm enough just as I am. And so is my daughter. And so is this life we've built, quiet and peaceful and ours. I spent 35 years waiting to be seen, to be valued, to be loved by people who were never going to give me those things. I spent 12 years and hundreds of thousands of dollars trying to buy what can't be bought. And then I spent one night watching my daughter be turned away from a Christmas party, and I finally understood. The problem was never me. It was never my worth. It was never my value. The problem was them and their inability to see what was right in front of them. So I walked away. I cut the ties. I chose myself and my family over people who'd spent a lifetime making it clear I would never be enough for them. Did I go too far? Maybe. Probably. Perhaps there was a middle ground, a less extreme solution. But you know what? I'm not sorry. I'm not sorry for protecting my daughter. I'm not sorry for refusing to continue being used. I'm not sorry for choosing peace over chaos, health over dysfunction, love over obligation. I'm not sorry at all. The sun is fully up now, warm on my face. Lily is still dozing beside me, trusting and peaceful. My coffee is still hot. The mortgage on this house, my actual house, is paid by me, for me protecting me. No strings attached, no conditions. No one can take it away because I failed to meet impossible standards, or because I refused to bankroll their lifestyle. This is freedom. This is peace. This is what choosing yourself looks like. And if that makes me the villain in their story, the ungrateful daughter, the heartless woman who abandoned her elderly parents, so be it. Because in my story, the one that actually matters, I'm the hero. I'm the one who broke the cycle. I'm the one who said enough. I'm the one who chose love over guilt, truth over obligation, freedom over chains. I did what I had to do, and I'd do it all again in a heartbeat. Because at the end of the day, I can look my daughter in the eye and know that I protected her. I can look in the mirror and know that I protected myself. I can lay my head on my pillow at night and sleep soundly without anxiety about the next bill, the next crisis, the next impossible demand from people who would never be satisfied. I'm free, we're free, and that's worth everything.